Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Redeemed Marriage Podcast. If you joined us last week, you know we did something a little bit different and we repurposed one of our old episodes so that you could get to know us a little bit better. If you're a new listener, you didn't know much about us, we went back and we retold the story of us. It was a replay from a couple of years ago, but a great opportunity to hear about who we are, how we met, how we started dating, how we got married, the bomb that dropped 13 years ago, and then the story of redemption. And so we also told you that we were going to be traveling for a couple of weeks. So what we wanted to do this week was even a little something different. We went back and we looked at all of our episodes from the Redeemed Marriage Podcast, 167 episodes. And we found the episode that is the most downloaded of all time. And it was actually part of a series that was called Inside the Mind of an Adulterer. And the very first episode of that series was the most downloaded episode. But our top 5 were actually the 5 in that series. So we wanted to go ahead and replay Inside the Mind of an Adulterer, Part 1. And this came from May of 2023. And it was a 5-part series. 3 of those were Inside the Mind of an Adulterer, and then 2 were Inside the Mind of the Betrayed. So the first 3 are really a conversation with Heather, and then the second 2 were a conversation with me. And so we wanted to tell you or replay the very first one so that it could kind of remind you, spark your interest if you've never heard those before, and maybe you'll go back and listen to all 5 of them because obviously it was topics that the listeners really wanted to hear. So hopefully you will go back and check those out and especially listen to this one today, Inside the Mind of an Adulterer. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Redeemed Marriage Podcast. This is Rusty and Heather Bryant. Excited to be back with you for another week, another episode. And hey, just a quick shout out to our listeners. Thank you so much for faithfully listening. And this past week was crazy. I think we had the largest number of downloads in a week for like that episode for that week. So,
which was funny to me because it started off so frustrating for you because the first time ever something went wrong with the uploading.
Yes,
right?
Oh my goodness. So, hey, sorry about that, people.
Yeah.
I mean, because like the first 30 people, I never, even on my phone, I never got the full thing, even after I fixed it. So
wow, and if you didn't get the whole thing, you missed kind of the meat of it.
Yeah, so if you happen to be one of those that automatically downloaded early in the morning last Monday, you might have missed the last 10 to 15 minutes.
And thanks to our listeners, because we actually had a listener come
really early and tell us about
say,
it.
Hey, did Rusty just cut you off?
Yeah, and I still really don't know what happened because it wasn't something that I did on my end, so I'm not real sure, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
anyway,
if you didn't get the whole 30 minutes,
go to the website because you can always listen to our episodes there. Every one of them's there. They've been archived there. TheRedeemedMarriage.com. So if for whatever reason you're whatever podcast platform you listen to or use, if it's not, the whole thing's not there, then definitely go find it. So it must have been a pretty good episode because everybody's listening. And also would like to just say thanks to those of you who have been sharing our podcast and sharing our Facebook page. It just helps for more people. And we even did a post today that was encouraging people to share it because I feel like there's a lot of people out there. We have a lot of Facebook followers, and they those are the people that they're trying. Like they're trying for their marriage. They're pursuing a healthy marriage, a godly marriage, and so that's why they're following these marriage ministries. But so many people, I think, are scared to tell other people or share or, because then they think, well, there must be something wrong with their marriage.
Right. Or this person shared it with me. Did they think something's wrong with mine?
Yeah, exactly. So we tried to make it a little bit easy today on our a good way to share, and a lot of people have been doing that for us. So thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Because we want our...
Can I tell what I went to this weekend?
Yes, but you got to hurry.
Okay,
I
I'll
want
go
to jump into
really
this.
fast. So I went to my very first concert ever. It was so much fun. I went to see Taylor Swift. Yes, I did.
I thought you went to Elvis.
Oh, hush. I tried on an Elvis t-shirt because I thought it'd be cute to wear a concert, and he made fun of me. But anyway, I got to go. I was gifted a ticket at the last minute, and I was like, why not? Let's do it. And I went, and it was the first concert I've ever been to, and I don't think I should ever go to another one because there's no way there can be a better concert than that.
I don't know. I don't think it could compete with Stryper, and that's probably the last one that I went to back in the day. People out there are going, well, who is Stryper?
I was going to sing one of the songs, but I'll refrain.
Yeah, let's do it.
But yeah, it was super fun. So I high energy today because I'm feeling it.
All right. Well, good, because hopefully...
Because you're fixing to attack me.
No, I'm not. But hey, this is actually going to be really good. We've been wanting to do something like this because I think the reason for this is a lot of times we hear and we listen to a lot of podcasts and we hear people and they try to make sense out of an affair. And you guys know our story. You've been listening to us, and I'm sure you know. But Heather had an affair almost 12 years ago. And so we talk a lot about her feelings and things that she was going through during that time. But there's this new sort of trend with podcasts and documentaries and things like that, and it's true crime. Like, people love true crime. And one of the things that's kind of floated out there a lot is the inside the mind of a serial killer or something like that, and just somebody asking, the serial killer or whoever, questions. And so we wanted to do that, but inside the mind, and I know this sounds awful, but inside the mind of an adulterer. And I think that it might help people to understand things a little bit better, but also to maybe even just, I don't know, I just feel like with adultery, people that have experienced it because they've maybe been betrayed by it, they try to understand it, and it's so hard to wrap our heads around it. And at the same time, maybe there's been a friend or a family member, and you try to make sense of it, and you just are constantly going, how in the world, how could you do that? And that's kind of the question that comes out a lot. So we're going to do this sort of investigative style, and I just want to say as we get started, for Heather to be willing to do something like this, you just think about it. If you're out there listening to this and you're probably going, oh, I would never. And that just shows how much we and Heather are so interested and so passionate about helping other people. Because, who wants to relive this? But we're going to do it in a way, look, we're not taking this, there's nothing light about this subject, but I'm not going to paint her into a corner because nothing that she says here is going to make me feel any differently about her. I'm sitting across from the most godly lady that I know, and I could not have said that 12 years ago. So here we go. Inside the mind of an adulterer. All right. Are you ready? Okay, so I think the biggest thing, and you say this a lot on our episodes and things when we're talking about the affair, you talk about how you don't just wake up one morning and go, oh, I think we're going to have an affair. It is this slippery slope.
Yeah.
All right. So can you just help us to think through that a little bit on what exactly you mean? Because most of us are probably thinking, oh, you just woke up and you were frustrated and mad at your marriage and you just decided, I'm going to go do something for myself and have an affair. So
Sure. Well, I will say, can I preface it by saying that this is hard on two levels. One, it's hard because it is really, really hard for me to go back there in my head and understand why I thought the way that I thought. Because right now, because of where God has brought me to, it's hard for me to look back and go, what was I thinking? How did I, I can remember the thoughts that I had, but they seem so warped now, and they seem so foreign, and they seem so repulsive but at the time they weren't.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to say, the second thing that I want to say is at no point in this discussion, whatever questions you ask me, should you hear me justifying how I felt.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, like me telling you the thoughts in my head, A, there's no reason that I should have felt that way.
Mm.
And B, they are not justified, and now they are like physically sickening
Mm-hmm.
to think about.
Mm.
So I want to be honest in what I felt, and I'm going to be honest, and I hope that somebody can go, yes, I've felt that, or and see it as you're living a lie. If you are saying this is right and this is how I feel and this is, so I just wanted to preface it by saying that, yes, it's hard. I mean, I feel like an idiot most of the time when I'm talking about it, but I know that there are people out there who have felt the same thing or have walked through the same thing with a spouse, and I just want to be able to shed light into that.
That's
so
good. Hey, can I stop you just for a second?
Sure.
Because I want you and I both to take a breath for a second, because I feel like I could really rush through this for the sake of time.
Yeah.
Let's make this 2 parts.
Okay.
Because I have a lot of questions.
Okay.
And I don't want us to get to a point where we're just blowing through the last 3 or 4 questions.
Okay.
So
Sure.
we're just going to take a breath and say, hey, this can take as long as it needs to, because we'll do part 1 today and we'll pick it up. And then after that, we are actually going to do Inside the Mind of the Betrayed.
Sure.
So you'll be able to ask me questions.
Yeah. Okay,
and we'll
so I have
share.
another week I can think about those questions.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So,
okay.
All right, here
So
we go. So if we
slippery
get
slope.
through 2 or 3 of them, that's
Okay.
fine, and then we'll pick it up next week.
Yeah, that's the best way that I know how to describe how I fell into an affair, or how I slid into the affair, is because I can 100% promise you that I never woke up and said, today I'm going to have an affair. I never even said, today it might happen. I just never dreamed that I would get there. Matter of fact, I looked at people who had an affair and thought, how could they do that to their spouse or their children, before I ever had an affair. So not only did I think I would never have an affair, I judged people who did.
Mm-hmm.
And I may have said this before, I had to apologize to someone. I mean, like, after I had an affair and was caught and was forgiven and redeemed and restored, I had to go to that person and say, I was so judgmental of you. And I don't even know if she knew I was, but I had to say, I was so judgmental of you because I walked by you at church and thought, how could she ever do that? So it's not a premeditated thing. It was not for me. Now, I can't, obviously, when I'm answering these questions,
Sure.
I can't speak
only
for
in your
everyone,
head.
but I can tell my story. And for me, it was never, ever premeditated in today I'm going to let that happen. Now, in that same breath, I will say that I did allow myself to think about what life would be like if I wasn't with you. Like, what if I was married to this person? Or what if I was married to that person? And it wasn't a sexual thing by any means. It was just, I wonder what life would be like with that person. And that is 100% opening the door for the enemy to take root in your mind when you start wondering what it would be like to be married to somebody else. What car would you drive? Where would you live? What would you get? I mean, like, that is just a dangerous playground for the enemy to play in. So if you're even one of those people who you're thinking, I'm not happy in my marriage, or I wasn't even unhappy. My spot was, I wonder what else is out there. Mm-hmm. And if you are thinking, if you're in a rut in your marriage, or if you're just kind of in a lull, or it's not an exciting time in your marriage, or even if you're frustrated in your marriage, if you allow yourself to think, what else is out there, or I wonder what life would be like if I hadn't married him and I had married this person. You are inviting the enemy into your mind, and he's going to wreak havoc. It is the perfect picture of the enemy prowling. I mean, it says in Scripture that the enemy prowls like a lion looking for someone to devour. And when you are allowing those thoughts to come into your mind, then you are inviting him in. And I think that was probably the furthest off thing that I can go back and see that was a red flag, that I wasn't protecting my heart. Like, that's the furthest back thing that I can remember.
Do you think, I mean, was that something that maybe was taking root and you were thinking about even before the initial relationship with someone?
Yes, 100%.
So it was even before that, maybe even entertaining those thoughts about somebody that you did not have an affair with.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, those weren't even thought. Like, I honestly did not even have those thoughts until like with that particular person, until I was already knee deep in the affair. These were thoughts I'm talking about probably years before, that it wasn't even a specific person. It was just allowing my mind to think, if life would have been different had I chosen someone different or was married to someone different. It was just, and it wasn't even like, I probably wouldn't even said it was wrong. Like, at that point in my life, I would have said, there's nothing wrong with what I'm doing.
Because you didn't see the slope that it would take you down.
Exactly. I never dreamed it would take me down.
And obviously there's people out there that have these fleeting thoughts.
Sure.
And
well, let me address that, because it's one of my favorite things to address.
Yep.
Is, guys, thoughts coming into your head are not the sin. I mean, we're human. A thought that comes into your head, it's what you do with it. It is, let me take that thought, and I can either run with it, I can follow it down a path that leads to destruction and death, or I can take it captive. 2 Corinthians 10:3-5 talks to us about taking our thoughts that are not honoring to God, taking those thoughts captive and making them obedient to Christ. So you're taking the thought that comes into your head, even if it's the thought of, I wonder what life would have been like if I hadn't married my husband and I'd married that person. Okay? Well, that thought coming into your head, I mean, it's a thought, but you take it captive, and you say, you know what? I'm not going to follow that down the path, because I know that path is not honoring to Christ. It is not what would be honoring to him at all. And so I'm going to take it captive. I'm not going to play the what if game, and I'm going to take it captive, and I'm going to say, God, you gave me my husband for a reason. We are in a covenant relationship, and you go back to, I'm going to choose to honor God with my thoughts. So that's the earliest just kind of red flag in looking back that I can remember. So then, because we're talking about a slope. So that, I didn't think that was quote, quote, dangerous. I never even really thought this is bad. It was just a thought process. It was just a fleeting thoughts. So then the next step that I can remember going to is the flirtations. I really enjoyed getting the attention of other men. I felt like the more attention I got, I felt more beautiful. I felt desired. And those things are not bad things, as long as they're coming from the correct source. Like, now you make me feel beautiful, and you make me feel adored, and you make me feel loved in those ways. And that's how we're designed. Like, that's a good thing, that you can make me feel that way. But if you are searching for that from anyone else, then there's a problem. There's a red flag. And guys, one thing that I really want you to hear me say is that I was not in a bad marriage. like, I think that sometimes we can justify what we do. Well, I'm seeking attention from other men because my husband doesn't give it to me. And you kind of justify it in that way. I was not in that kind of marriage. I was in a marriage where I was getting loved on. I was getting told that I was loved. I was getting told that I was beautiful. I mean, like, there wasn't anything lacking in my marriage that was pushing me to look elsewhere for these things. So, like, I think sometimes we get wrapped up in, oh, well, I see how she did that because her husband doesn't give her any attention. But that's not my story at all. So you say, well, Heather, why were you seeking that from other men if you were getting it at home? It's because my relationship with my Heavenly Father was not in a good place. And so I was constantly empty because I wasn't being filled up by the love of Jesus and my relationship with Him. And so I was searching for something else out there when in reality, I needed a relationship with my Heavenly Father, and I needed to be tied to the source of His love. But instead, I was searching for other things, which led me to other people in friendships and ultimately to other men that I was desiring to fill me up when there is not a man on the planet that was designed to do that for me.
Let me ask you this question, and I don't know that we've ever really talked about this specifically, but it just brings this thought and this question to my mind, and some of it is because I listened to a podcast this past week. There was an interview of a couple that had gone through something very similar that we did, and they were talking through it, and you mentioned the flirting and like that's just kind of like that's that was your nature back then.
Right.
And again, there's like you can't say, nobody out there can say, well, that's just my personality.
Right.
Like, shut up is what I want to say to you, because it can lead you into something that you never expected. And that's the perfect example of this. But like I can look back and, we talk about this a lot. I had no idea what was going on. But as I look back and my eyes are much more wide open, I can think through quite a few names of guys that I feel like you flirted with in different ways. And so I wonder if, and you can answer this question, is it something that you obviously never thought you were going to take steps that were going to cross a line?
Sure.
Which I'll ask you some of those questions in a minute. But did you sometimes just sort of throw a flirt out to see which guy would actually respond to it in a way that you could go a little bit further with it?
Not sometimes, every time. Because I could throw a flirt out there, and if it was reciprocated, then you continue doing it. But if you got shut down, then no, I would never try that again. Like you just I kind of knew the people who flirted back, if that makes sense. And because if they didn't, well, then it was a feeling of rejection, and nobody likes that. And so it was kind of like, oh, he has that playful, what I called playful banter, which I know now it was not. I mean, it was more than that, but there were certain people. And I love that you hit on the personality, because yes, my personality is very outgoing, and I've even really reined that in a lot since then. But you can't say that God created you that way. He may create you, and He created me with an outgoing personality, but that personality, the outgoing personality, is supposed to be used in order to bring honor and glory to Him. So my outgoing personality has many benefits that can further the kingdom if I focus them in the right direction. And so just saying that's how He made me so I can use it however I want to is I can't think of the word that I'm trying to say. Bull poo poo. Will that do?
Bull poo poo.
Bull poo poo.
We'll go with bull
yeah,
poo poo.
because yes, he gave me an outgoing personality, but it's one that is supposed to be used correctly and in order to draw people to him and bring people to him. So yes, I definitely can remember times that I would flirt hoping just to receive something back. And what happens is that fuels that need. And so then you continue to do it because it's kind of like, I can remember one of our counselors saying it's kind of like a drug, like a hit. It's like, I got flirted back with and I was made to feel special in that. So I wanted to do it again and then do it again. And that's where the slippery slope starts because, or continues to be slippery as you go further and further. Sin takes you further than you ever intended to go, and costs you more than you knew that it would cost you. And so with that slippery slope, there was flirtations and I received them back. So then it was more, and then it was more, and then it was more. And then also things that I look at now and going, that was not okay. But in the moment, you think it's okay because nobody knows about it. For example, text messages. Just flirting through text messages or things that you literally never think anyone will know. Sending pictures. And I'm not talking about gross pictures, but just, flirtatious pictures or, things like that, just back and forth that you in the moment think there's really, this is innocent, it's an innocent thing. And I can look back and I have to make myself remember how I was feeling because again, it's easy to go, how did I do that? But I did. So in order to help other people see that it's a lie, you have to be able to call it what it was. Yeah. And that's what it was. I could literally think, this is innocent. It's not going anywhere. It's just for fun. It makes things exciting, all of those things. But I still at that point never thought that it would lead to anything else. It was just quote, quote, innocent flirting.
Part of the reason why I brought that up is because I do think that there's people that are listening to us and they've never felt in their marriage that this was an issue or will be an issue, that sort of thing. And one of the things that I do want to just make people cautious about is that you may be on the receiving end of something that you don't even realize is a little bit of a bait, that somebody's baiting you to see if you're going to engage with them.
That's good.
And I do think that happens probably more than we think. And so I just want to tell everybody to just be on guard, have your radar on big time. And if you get a text or, it could be through social media or, whatever, all these methods that you think are secretive or nobody's going to see. And you may
gaming apps, any of that.
Yeah, and you may get a you might get a text from somebody that it doesn't even cross your mind. But when you respond, if it gives an inch to that person,
that's right,
then it could begin to go further. And that's why we say, the extreme boundaries are you stay away from communication with members of the opposite sex, period.
Right.
On any type of, it's okay to have friends of the opposite sex. We like that, that's a topic for another time. But as far as communicating with them, your marriage is worth the extreme boundaries.
That's right.
And so whether that's through text or phone calls or,
instant message, Facebook message,
any of that, there just it just shouldn't happen.
That's right.
And again, there's business and how, we've talked about that a lot. We've talked about boundaries and that's not this topic. But it's just one of those things that I want everybody to just understand. That's why we're doing this, because you're telling us what was going through your mind.
Right.
And so for you throwing that bait out there just to see. And I mean, who knows how far it could have gone with somebody else if they had responded in that way.
Yeah. Or if somebody had been brave enough to go, this is not okay.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, like, I just think, what if somebody else had shut it down?
Right.
You know, instead of feeding into what...
And even maybe even confronted me about it. And just
like,
been like, hey, dude, do you know that your wife is doing this?
Right.
You know?
Right.
But, you know, people just don't want to meddle.
That's right.
And so,
yeah.
Well, okay. So we're sitting here on 30 minutes,
no.
and which
That's
is about
only one question.
That was one question.
It was. Well, and the slippery slope obviously led into a place of destruction, and I don't think that you can be on a slippery slope that doesn't end in destruction. Like, it is, if you start taking those little steps. And you don't rein them in, and you don't take them captive and make them obedient to Christ. It is only, you cannot say, I'm only gonna flirt. That's what I'm trying to say. You cannot say to some, I would never let it go further than just some texts. I would never let it go further than just going to get a drink with somebody. Like, if you're putting a line out there that you would never cross, if you're going to cross it, period. Because it just, one thing leads to the next, leads to the next, leads to the next. And that seems iffy at first. And then you get really comfortable with it. And then you go to the next step and you feel really comfortable with that and still in control, and then go to the next step and you're not in control. It is a lie to think that you're in control of all of those things, and it's going to slip into death.
Well, this is obviously a fascinating topic, and we're going to call this part 1.
16 at this rate.
No, I think that, oh man, there
Maybe
are
3.
quite a few questions. But yeah, it might take 2 or 3. But I hope that people don't, I think that now people are going to see that, yes, this is a topic of inside the mind of an adulterer, but there's so much more to it in what we just talked about, because what we just talked about were, you know, the red flags and the warning signs and having your, you know, being on guard and boundaries, and there's so much more to it than just, hey, let's find out what this person that had an affair was thinking when they were having an affair. This is a message for everybody.
Absolutely.
And I guarantee that there are people out there that, as they're listening to this, there's a check in their spirit about stuff that has happened or is happening. And look, we're just telling you, don't continue down the slippery slope.
That's right.
Because it will cause destruction that could possibly be destruction that cannot be repaired. Now, we know that God can repair, and He has done that with us, but nobody knows how their spouse is going to react either, because it may not be one of the situations like we have in our story, where I was willing to forgive and we were willing to both fight for our marriage. You actually completely repented, 180-degree turn, and so those things can happen, and that's the hope that we bring. But don't roll the dice.
Stop it before.
Don't roll the dice.
Right.
I mean, yeah. So, like, instead, listen to these podcasts and go, I want what they have without going through what they went through.
Absolutely.
And I would go back and change that every single time.
Absolutely.
If I could. All right. Hey, we're going to wrap it up because too many more questions, so we're going to pick this back up next week. Thank you, Heather, for being vulnerable and just for sharing with our listeners. And thank you guys for listening. If you've got questions throughout the week, or you want to reach out to us, if you want to reach out to Heather and ask her something specific, you can message us on Facebook. We read those together.
We do.
So just so you know, that's not something where you can get in touch with just Heather or just me, but through our Facebook page, you can communicate with us, and we'll respond appropriately. And if it's a direct question for one of us and you're a member of the opposite sex, we'll do that together.
Absolutely.
And we do it all the time. So make sure that you feel comfortable doing that. So, hey, thanks for listening. We'll see you guys next week.